It's Dr. Dan, board certified pediatrician, and welcome back to Is That Normal? And today's topic, why is my kid such a picky eater? This is a pet topic of mine, and I like to start this off with, Mom and Dad, I'm sorry. I literally, you can ask my wife, she's actually on the other end of the camera, you can ask her, I eat like a 7-year-old.
Yes, he does.
I still have problems to this day. And so I try to use this to get to parents and kids about how to get through the problem of picky eating. The key is to remember in the beginning that picky eating can just be a developmental stage. If you think about toddlers as they're getting older, they go through a period of time around 9 to 12 months where they're scared of strangers. And then as they get a little bit older, they get into this period of time where they realize they can control their environment. And there's the terrible twos. All these things are figuring out your independence and your self-involvement in things, and that you have choices as a human being. So if you have choices as a human being, I defy someone to tell me that they wouldn't have that chocolate cake instead of the Brussels sprouts. And that's what you're going through when you're a little kid. Is that you're trying to figure out, why are my parents, the people who love me more than anybody, trying to force that green ball into my mouth versus that lovely thing I was rubbing all over my face when I was 1 year old. And having that mindset of that this is, when you're younger, a developmental stage, and as you're older, a lot of times a fear. So what I like to do with kids who are picky eating, it all depends on the age. So we're going to divide it up into 3 sections. The first is the toddler age. And as I said, this is a really, really common thing from the ages of about 15 months up to 2.5. The kids suddenly like the white foods, things that just have a texture and, not a lot of like spice or flavor or whatever it is. They do French fries and all these things like that that have salt. The reason they do that is that they're flavorful, and actually a lot of those things can even be addicting. I like to say the United States is one of the few countries in the world with a children's menu. And the children's menu is there because as parents, we don't want to lose. And so we give our kids these foods because they have to eat. That's our job, to feed our kids. But we end up giving them foods that aren't very nutritious. They're addicting, and they make the kids realize that if I wait long enough, that's what I'm going to get. So one bit of advice I give to the parents of a toddler is, if they're the only child, make sure at that age we stop thinking as much about feeding them and we start eating with them. Set good examples. Try something off mom's plate. If you're dad, try something off mom's plate. Make a big deal about it. Act it out. Show that this thing, when you did it, make a big deal if the mom tries something different, it has a different flavor. Make a big deal of how good it is. And if the child is ever brave enough to try something, you want to really play it up. It isn't about bribing. Bribing only works a couple times, and then they get tired of it. So you really want to make sure you promote the behavior going forward. And remember, it is in most situations that we're in, given that there's a lot of different situations that everybody's in, but in most situations that you're in, your child is not going to starve in your house. There will be food accessible. So keeping the dinner times, the lunch times, the breakfast times routine, trying to do them at the same time all the time, not really snacking as much in between, although they can have snacks, but you want to keep them healthy. Make sure you have good food choices in the house. And when the time comes, show them that there's a benefit of being brave and trying some new food. Now, if you go through that toddler period, and unfortunately you had either someone like myself who is unbelievably stubborn and fought everything, or you kind of gave in to the children's menu, you have now entered the world of the picky school-age child. This one's a little more difficult. They already know how to get through things. This age can manipulate and ask for things. and hold things out. In fact, as I like to say, I always have a story. The story I tell kids is when I was 7, my father really wanted me to eat vegetables. And he put a bowl of Campbell's soup in front of me. I was 7 years old. It was 4:30 in the afternoon. And he sat me down and he said, Danny, you're not getting up from that spot until you finish that soup. And I'm a good boy. And I listened to my father. And I said, okay, Dad. And at midnight, he came out and I was still sitting there with a bowl of soup with a film over the top. And I'm like, I won. And from that point on, my parents kind of stopped fighting. The lesson there is you cannot win the fight against the child of that age. Because if you think it through, even if you forced it into their mouth, they can always throw up. So don't fight. Be smarter. What I did with my son, because I didn't want my son Corey to end up like me. Luckily, my older son Crew eats everything. I don't know how he did that, but he's really great with that and always has been. But I didn't want Corey to turn out like me. So we came up with the idea of Friday Try Day in my house, which was when he was younger, we would make some sort of chart on the wall or use the calendar. And we said, if you were brave enough to try a new food one day a week and you do 3 Fridays in a row, that Saturday we'll go out and do something special. That way, dinner time isn't always a fight. That doesn't mean you acquiesce and give the child anything he wants. You make a healthy plate, you eat a healthy plate, and you work through that. And then you tell them that if he's brave enough to do those Fridays, he could do them on other days too. And the more times he challenges himself, he'll see how proud you are of him or her. And when you're there, feel that pride that they did something. And every once in a while they'll find like mangoes, which like everybody likes mangoes because they taste like candy supposedly, except for me. I have issues. But you'll find things that they like. Like our son turned out that he liked hot things, hot sauce or something like that. So he puts hot sauce on everything. But if you do that over and over again, you'll build a pattern where they can go forward on their own, and then they'll have a more diverse diet. As I mentioned, the United States is one of the few countries in the world with a children's menu. Kids in other countries eat foods that have all sorts of spices in them from the time that they're little. They don't have these same kind of issues. So remember, as a parent, feed your child, give them healthy choices, and reward their bravery. Don't fight the fight. The final thing I do is then you get past those kids to the even older kids. So the kids like from 10 and up. And these are kids who have rationalizations for why they don't do things and have made choices, and they like to stand on their independent choices. Those kids, I'll actually tell them stories. And I like to use my own story. And the subject of those stories, I like to call truth and consequence. So first I give them the truth, which is eating a balanced diet is kind of like how you build things out of Lego. So for a 10-year-old, I'll say, are you good at Legos? And most 10-year-olds have worked with Legos. They go, yeah. I go, so let's have a contest, see who builds a better Lego machine, a Lego house. You're going to have 4 pieces. I'm going to have 100. Who's going to build a better house? And they say, you, that's not fair. I'm like, of course, right. I have more pieces. So you have to eat enough calories to build a good house. So you're right, that was completely unfair. Let's change the rules. And I go, all right, I'm going to give you 100 Legos, but they're all the same piece. And I'm going to have 100 Legos of all different pieces. Who's going to build a better house? And they start to realize that I will, because I have more variation. My house can be more intricate and do different things. I'm like, those Legos are types of food, and you are the house. And so it's really important that you just don't eat one thing, because while you can build a house, it's not going to be the same kind of structure that I'll have. And mine will be longer lasting and just better. I go, you want another example? And I do this for kids who are a little bit older. What do you put into a car to make it go? And they all say gas. I say, right, you put gas into a new car and it'll go, but you know what's going to happen in about 100 feet? It's going to break down. Because you can ask your mom or dad, There's a lot of other things that go into a car besides gas. There's oil, there's radiator fluid, there's wiper fluid, transmission fluid, all these different things to make the car go. But you are a brand new car, and if you put gas into it, you're right, you're going to go. But over time, your body's going to break down and the car will break down. And I happen to know that. And I'll tell them, I go, my story is I didn't eat fruits and vegetables when I was a kid. I told you that whole soup story before. And then I started having real trouble with a certain part of my body. And I had to go see doctors who had to put cameras in some very embarrassing places. And I go, these are not lies. I'm not proud of the fact that I did this. In fact, I still have issues to this very day. And whose fault is it? And they all go, yours. And I'm like, right. So when your mom and dad or I are talking to you about eating these foods that you don't think you're going to like, it's only because they don't want you to crash the car or have a poor house or have a camera put in some place that you really don't want to talk about it with friends. So those are ways you can talk about picky eating with your children. There are a lot of good references out there. Actually, healthychildren.org. Healthychildren.org is the American Academy of Pediatrics website. They actually have a nice 10 ways of helping with picky eating children. The CDC has a good site that talks about that. But most of it is all kind of commonsensical. Keep things routine. Don't fight. Give multiple options. But the key is make the child understand that this is really for them and allow them to make the choice and reward them for their bravery. Shine the light on the positive path. Don't fight for them to get on it because you will lose that battle as a parent. And once you lose once, it's all downhill from there. As always, if you really feel like your child is having serious issues with eating, and this can happen with children with anxiety or autism or things like that, that's the time you call your pediatrician for help. Because if you're nervous, we should be too.